Still here.
Trustee Stallman,
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Here. Here. Michelle.
Here.
Member.
Approval of the minutes from the village board of October 14th. A motion.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second
Any discussion on those minutes? Being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes carried. Public comment, provide 2-minute opportunity for citizens to voice their opinions in the village board. Village board cannot respond as a not with the meeting. Anybody? Moving on. Thank you. 6A, resolution 2025-080, approving the 2026 village fee schedule. This went through the committee before on the 14th, and it's approved 7-0.
To approve resolution 2025-080.
And then Nancy's going to second it?
Sure.
Oh, there we go. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution approved. Resolution 2025-081, approving trick or treat. Hours and day is always Halloween day, and it's over the hours, 5:30 to 7. Can I have a motion on that, please?
Make a motion to approve resolution 2025-081.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Get the candy in.
All right, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Resolution carries. Resolution 2025-082, approving and authorizing the village president to development agreement with Rig Caledonia Incorporated, Middle Road LLC, tax incremental district number 6. And a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2025-082.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Resolution.
Thomas Keeper.
Yeah, I've got some comments on it. I think the first one is we got this at 2 o'clock yesterday, which is a lot of detail, a lot of material to ask for and get conversant with, but,
Agreement with it.
okay, that's fine. There's some number changes in here which are challenging. Oops, there it is.
Well, Nancy's looking, is this the first proposed development agreement that we've had on? Or is this revision?
Harry from Ellers is here if you want to have him explain some of the elements related to Ellers Sport contract, or staff can walk you through some of the other elements related. But yeah, this is the first one that relates to all 5 phases, with one overarching MRO related to the public improvements that are included in phase 1. And it mirrors actually most of the terms that we discussed when we were in closed session 2 weeks ago.
Well, maybe that would be good to talk with Ehlers, because when I look at, the projection worksheet, in our first iteration that came out in 24, we were at, value added a little over 122 million, and now we're at 146 million. There's also a change in the basic tax rate. Then when we get over to this specific District 6, when you look at total expenditures, there's a change there of over 3 million, but it looks like it's been trying to be balanced out. And then if we look at some of the incentives that were approved, we were originally at 29.7, now we're at 32.9 million. Understanding why these things have changed.
Good evening, everyone. I can just give a really high-level overview of the terms. Sorry, my voice has automated dealing with a sinus infection. Right now, keep your distance, But the development agreement does spell out a maximum incentive, and it's based on a present value. So the maximum incentive is set at just over 14 million, which largely matches up with the infrastructure costs over phase 1, 2. And so the incentive is capped based on that using a 7% discount rate. And the reason for the change in the future value incentive is just the way that we project out those revenues. Previously, we were using a 1% increase in values over time. We revised that to 3%, just so that the numbers within the development agreement match up to those infrastructure costs on the present value of the incentive. So the cap is still that $14 million. The total amount shown there will vary, just depending on how quickly the development comes online, how much value is created. But ultimately that cap will be that 14. The developer could very well receive less, but they won't really receive. Just a quick overview of how that MRO is structured. Phase 1 would be 100% legal after 15,000 deduction for the admin costs the village will incur approximately on an annual basis to keep that district open, make the payments, audit, things of that nature. Then phases 2 through 5 will be a 90% PAYGO, and all of that will cut off once that $14 million cap is reached. And on the front end, we did do a review of the expected rate of return on this development. We found that it was around 11.7% was the expected rate of return. And within the development agreement, there's the ability to actually decrease some of that pay-as-you-go incentive if that rate of return comes in much higher than anticipated. So those internal rates of return caps are really set by the various phases. Phase 1 is set at 14%, phase 2, 14.5%, phase 3, 15%, phase 4, phase 4 is 16.5%. So the reason why those IRR caps increase as you move through the phases is to encourage the developer to pursue not just phase 1, but keep moving through all of the phases that are planned because their return could increase higher under those. If that rate of return is exceeded by the developer, any amount over that is split 50-50 between the village and the developer with that same $14 million cap on the overall incentive. That's a really high level overview of everything, so we can keep having discussion and field interest.
Yes. I know you would.
Well, the simplest possible terms, by the end of the term of this bid, 20 years, I think.
Yep.
What would be left in the bid for the village?
Based on that 3% increase in value, I think it was shy of 3 million, around 2.8 million or so. That would be money this village could use for other projects throughout the district.
That's in year 20.
That's over the 20 years. So yeah, by year 20, it would be 2.8 million. Right.
And can that be utilized within those 20 years, or is it necessary to wait for 20 years out before that's available?
Like that cash over time, you could issue debt or spend the cash on smaller projects over time and kind of front load that. So if you present value that, it might be more than $1.5 million if you were to do projects on the front end.
You'd have to leave enough in there for the 90% payback, right?
Yeah.
And then over and above that, so it's presuming that 90% was inside the bid, those funds were there, then once that 90% is reached for the total infrastructure costs, then those funds are available, but not until then.
So on an annual basis, the village will collect 100% of the
Right.
90% goes back to the developer. That other 10% could be retained within the TID for other projects.
Okay, so each year the 90%, it doesn't accumulate. The developer gets it back each year.
Right, you got it.
And one of the issues I have with it is that at the end of the 20 years, you have 20-year-old homes. You don't have new homes. It's not as though, it's not like monopoly pieces. You wait 20 years and drop them into the bid, and now they're worth whatever you think they should be. Isn't that bid now holding 20-year-old homes? And when you look at the valuation, do you take that into consideration?
The homes won't all be built in year one, they'll be built
Right.
over a multi-year term, so some of them might only be 10 years old at closure.
Is that built into these assumptions?
I think on the whole, residential properties really do appreciate over time, even if parts of the internals of that house need to be replaced, the value isn't really going to go down unless it's a large market adjustment like 2008. But I think a home value, even if it's 20 years old, 20 years from now, it's going to be worth more.
I'm just wondering, when you look at what the presumed total value is by the end of the bid, what assumptions are underlying that number?
Yeah, I can talk through that. So phase one, we modeled that at $450,000 per home, given that's an earlier home. Phase 2 through 5, we modeled at $500,000 per home, and then we have a 3% economic inflator on that. So we assume each year is up. That makes sense?
Yeah, so when you say that, I'm looking at the recitals in the document. And if you're talking about a $450,000 home, that's not chump change. And we say in this item 4 here, the demands for supplier facility housing for temporary and permanent workforce and infrastructure demand. Well, workforce housing is now kind of a new category that's in between low income and first time home builders things, and it seems to be this creature that says people who are working production jobs as much as anything, it's a form of housing for them. That's not a $450,000 home. That's a so it doesn't match the figures, the type of figures that we're talking about. That's just a challenge for me when I look at it. And I'm still, when we talk a 20-year-old house, we're talking time for new roofs. So we may say the real estate market is always going to have a 3% increase to 4%. But now, when by the time these come fully onto our tax base, they're older homes for people to look at. I mean, there's a disconnect, and we're getting 90% back. And I know I asked this in one of the last meetings, and I don't know that the developers may be helping out. But my question was, when I just look at the development, I mean, they're good developers. There's no question on that. What's in it for them to do this? And the only thing I can come up with is in that 90% return, there has to be a funding mechanism that I don't clearly understand that actually puts them in a better place than if we paid for that road to go through if they did a standard residential development. That's my count.
Yeah, so on that last point, the village could go out and borrow money and put in this infrastructure, but then you're holding all of the risk.
Right, 1.2 million.
For the entire 20 some odd million of infrastructure costs, if you were to go out and.
Units were including, you're talking about the roads that the developer would normally put in. And so if it wasn't in a TIF, the residential builder would put those roads in, it's calculated in their cost per house. 1.2 million is the cost that's in the documents for extending 5 miles over the claimant. So that's the cost that, yes, we would have to incur or handle somewhere else. I believe Lee suggested at one point that could have been moved over to one of our other kids right there and absorbed into it to make that cost.
I'm not entirely sure what, is there a question? Sorry.
No,
Okay.
it's much a question. It's just, the thing is, I don't see how this works that benefits a standard developer unless there is something in that 90% that they're getting back over the 20 years. That, oh, and there's an answer apparently coming from the sidelines.
Oh,
Did you sneak in?
He
Hello.
did.
All right. Just to your point, I mean, it's a great question, and it's one that I think was attempted to be addressed in the development agreement with the internal rate of return that Barry mentioned. So in order to look at, is the developer making too much money on this? So these percentages are high, right? 100% on the first phase and 90% on the second phase. How do we know, what mechanism do we have to make sure that that's under control. And that's where that IRR look back, mechanism was put into place. And it's per phase, so that as phase one is substantially completed, there's a whole variety of financial information that has to be turned over to the village's financial planners. They do this analysis to determine what kind of return are they getting on their money based on the verified costs of the development, and the amount of money coming in on the profits. Are they making too much money? And that's where the sliding scale comes in. So if they do that first phase, and that's all they do, their internal rate of return is capped at 16.5, oh, what's that, 14%. So if in that analysis they come to the determination that too much of a profit is being made and the IRR, the internal rate of return, is higher than 14%, then instead of getting 100% on the first phase, it drops down to 50%. And that 50% then continues to be applied until the next look back. And part of the negotiations we had on this, originally there was a desire by the developer to have just one look back, and when everything was done. And what we decided to do was to try and do a look back after each phase, so we can kind of keep our hands on the information as it's happening. So now you go to phase two. Phase two is completed. That same analysis gets done. If they come in under the 14.5%, if 2 of the 5 phases are done, they're fine, and they'll get 90% down phase 2. If they're going over, again, it drops down to 50%. So the idea was to try and do that on a phase-by-phase basis. And that's just one of the mechanisms we have in place to control the amount of information, the amount of money that the developers make.
Mr. Bushman, I assume it's done in Excel?
Yeah.
Possible I could get the Excel version for the PDF, like to go through the calculations. It helps me understand this in a much clearer way than trying to.
Yeah, I'll leave that question. I don't know how that works with open records.
Well, I mean, I think the information that goes into the Exhibit G.
Yeah.
All right. So there's certain information that we've agreed is protected. It's proprietary, and that's when you do that IRR look back. But in terms of like verifying how did you arrive at the numbers, that I'm sure we can figure out a way to make that happen so that it doesn't become a public record. But Exhibit G was added to the development agreement so that it's out there for everyone to see what the development assumptions are, what the expected tax increment coming in is, and what the payout on the MRO is as well, so it all ties back in. So, I mean, we're using our financial consultants to be the middleman, so to speak, to verify the numbers.
But as far as Exhibit G, I can share, so you can see how the incentive calculation works. Yep.
Okay, and send it through Todd. Todd forward.
Yep.
Thank you.
So it stays in a public record.
It is a public record, right? And so I think, we're entitled to know how did you arrive at the numbers that are in this public record that's attached to the development agreement that we're approving. I think that's fine. As long as I've got the mic and I keep talking. I just wanted to mention a few things that Harry mentioned, but just to make sure that we're all clear on it. The MRO here is capped. It's capped at that net present value number of the $14,092,035. So you see that there's that 7% interest that keeps accumulating on that. If all that work is paid out, at the end of the day, if someone does a net present value calculation, correct me if I'm wrong, it comes down to that 14 million. If the village, but because of other projects, maybe you've got money on hand to pay off the MRO early, and you could save some of that interest, you can do that. And you would be paying off then whatever the principal is at that point in time. So just want to make sure you knew that. We also have the IRR is another safety valve, so to speak. We have letters of credit and performance bonds. So in addition to those protections, The developer's gonna have to put out a letter of credit to cover the cost of the, public infrastructure and performance bond, so that if for some reason it doesn't happen, we will have the funds to complete the public infrastructure. If for some reason we still don't have enough money after that, there's a corporate guarantee in place, a separate company that again, our financial planners have vetted, to assure us that it does have, money. And, so that's another safety valve. Once the TID closes, let's say that this plays out, what we've been told is that it's not likely that the developer is going to receive compensation or reimbursement of all their costs. Let's say that happens. Say the TID closes after 20 years, and they still have not received all the reimbursements that they wanted to receive. The obligation on the village's part ends at the TID closure. There's no further obligation to make good on any additional costs that have not yet been reimbursed. So that's again another safety valve. And then I don't know if you, I won't belabor the point, but if you want Gary to go over Exhibit G, I personally found it helpful to go over the 3 pages, maybe on a high level, but just kind of dial down as to what kind of development assumptions are we making? And because that's the basis for everything else. And then it kind of flows right into the next sheet and for the final one. And then, Lee was saying that can be verified then, later on. But I just thought it might be helpful because I think Exhibit G, let's face it, we're relying on our financial consultants. We're relying on this information because it's the centerpiece of the development agreement. So if you wouldn't mind just diving a little bit further into that.
Can we pull that up on the screen?
Wait. 70,
Yeah, it's a chapter, it's the developer.
it starts at 72. Talking about the development assumptions.
Exhibit G, right,
Yeah,
exactly.
So this is the valuation assumptions for the 5 phases of this development. So just working left to right, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can see this is built out over the majority of the life of the district, all the way through year 13 of the district out in 2036. So phase 1, obviously the first one coming on. We've assumed these values are based on a $450,000 home, and then for the lots that aren't developed but are improved, we've assumed those have a $90,000 valuation. So you can see those values come on as homes are built on those vacant lots. Phase 2, we have those lots and homes coming on at $90,000 again per lot, and then $500,000 per home. And you see these values go up over time because we have a 3% appreciation factor built into these values. So those houses coming on in 2036 are worth more than $500,000, just given that inflation. Any questions on this one? On the whole, you're looking around 140 million of value coming out of this district over that 20-year line. And this is based on those 252 lots being developed.
And this is the increase from the 122 original 24.
Right,
So we
because
look-
that was based on a 1% appreciation factor, and now we've revised that to 3% and slightly rejiggering how many lots are assigned each phase.
And why did you make that change?
And that was based on information from the developer. Or 1% to 3%, why did we do that? So that's that incentive cap of 14 million is based on infrastructure costs, and we wanted the number in the exhibit to better match up to what the infrastructure costs are. So by using that 3% inflationary factor, we got it pretty much to where the cap was going to be. We just wanted everything throughout the agreement to match. When we do run annual cash flow updates for the village, we use a much more conservative figure, probably more around 1%. So because we want to show kind of the worst case scenario for amount of revenues coming to the village. This actually shows more money come to the village than may happen, just based on that inflationary factor, and that 10% would be higher than this. Does that help? So that cap is really based on incentive or infrastructure costs.
What is the immediate, infrastructure commitment that's going to occur from the builder to the village? Like, as far as 5 mile, trails, something like that?
Yeah, there is an infrastructure exhibit to the development
Yeah, I
agreement.
was looking at it, but
Yeah, it goes pretty into the weeds as to everything that's involved. It is pretty.
really long term, I get that, I'm just looking at the immediate benefit. But,
When would it happen?
yeah, like the immediate benefit, especially 5 miles.
So you're asking if they would start on the 5 mile before they started actually
Yeah.
building the homes.
Yeah.
So yes to which,
It is, yes, that's
Yeah.
correct. So there's significant infrastructure costs on the front end, which is also why that was skewed up to the 100% from the 90%. Off the top of my head, I want to.
That's all. Can you go up to those?
Considerable infrastructure costs on that first phase due to the Queens Dish 5 mile. So off the top of my head, I want to say it's 5.5 million, just the infrastructure excluding land costs and some of the other third party costs. So that first phase is really underwater, which we knew that was part of the deal. So unlike in a lot of older tips where municipalities taking the risk, doing the bond, it's really us taking the risk on this deal. So we know, we're hopeful that, if these valuations are hit, that means we're all better off. We'd love to get to that IRR threshold of 16.5%, because that means that half's going to the municipality, half's going to us after that. But as mentioned earlier, we're probably closer to 12 to 13% IRR. And again, IRR is an internal rate of return based on for every $100 that went out, if we got a 12% internal rate of return, 12% annually, so the project is done. It's a pretty low threshold. Most deals we see are 15 to 18% IRR is what people are looking for. But again, we're confident that over time this will be positive and move things forward. So that's a little bit to answer your question.
right,
How are we better off? How does this work? We're all motivated, we want to work economically. So it's that internal rate of return. And without the TID piece, it doesn't, because that first phase is very underwater.
the first phase, the 1.2 million in the first phase, according to the documents and stuff, is the extension of 5 mile of Clean Ditch. The other infrastructure costs, those would be the road, specifically in those, if you weren't in a TID, you were just, well, let's pick on Homestead Acres, project. It's not in the TID. So the roads that you develop out there, you take that cost, work it or fold it into the cost of the individual housing.
That's correct.
Correct.
So we talk about public infrastructure, we're talking about all of the roads.
Roads, because you're gonna transfer, later gonna transfer those overages. But in this case, in the TID, we're looking at it and saying, we're gonna make it part of this package deal, even though it would normally be your cost if you were just developing the property and not. So I guess where I'm coming back down to is I look at it and I see the 1.2 million, I get, that's what the village wants to extend that road. Everything else, even though it's public infrastructure, at the end of the day, normally in a regular residential development, you would be absorbing those costs, putting it into the housing package. And then at a certain time that you're done, you turn the maintenance of the roads and everything over us. Am I missing something?
That's generally correct. Yeah, with the exception, I'm not completely sure on that 1.2 number. I think it's more.
Yes, well, that's the number that's in here, about the 5 mile. That's what I'm getting.
Sure. And also from the standpoint of most of the residential developments that we've done, I can not mention a bunch of them in various communities. There's always some kind of public-private partnership to get it to work. These are really the only tools in the toolbox we have to get these things to balance, make economic sense, both from the municipality and for us on the development side. So 90 to 95% of the developments we do have some kind of TID association with it. So it's not uncommon, but you're correct. 15, 20 years ago, when it wasn't as prevalent using TID, most of those costs would just roll back in to the development and they're able to get it.
Right, I think that's what we're looking at Homestead.
Yeah, and I'm not involved.
Oh, I can turn around and Ray. I've had the pleasure of working with Ray over the years. He's fine developer.
Yep.
Trustee Pierce?
What?
Where did you find no, it's an official title, so where did you find the $1.2 million?
I mean, that, maybe just the cost of the road itself being the 1.2, but, I mean, you have to add.
This is on the original executive summary that came out. Project plan, page 3, had estimated total project cost expenditures. It said the developer would be responsible for the extension of 5 Mile Road at an estimated cost of $1.2 million.
Oh, that was from our conversation back when we were looking at the development originally, correct?
Correct.
That's not in this tax, I didn't see it in this tax.
No, but I mean, there's nothing else that changes it. That's the only figure we haven't talked about.
I can just tell you that the cost is not going down. Unfortunately.
I go to Olympia Brown, so I'm looking at the plan in the neighborhood, and in this working out for you as well, I wanna know what, you know, what the immediate benefit is to you. So thank you, great.
Sure.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve and authorize the development agreement. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay, and I do this because the very idea of a TID means that current taxpayers are subsidizing all of the services for the 20 years that the TID exists until that tax increment occurs.
Thank you, Fran.
So,
Thank you, Fran.
All right, resolution 2025-83, authorizing the issuance of tax incremental revenue bonds for TID 6. No motion on this item.
I'll make the motion to approve resolution, 2025-083.
Second. Is there any discussion on this?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand the bonding piece of it, since we talked about bonds in the previous part. Okay.
Any specific question?
All right, how does this bonding differ from what we would normally do if we went to bond?
Mr. President, this is a municipal revenue obligation. This is the general obligation debt of the village. So this MRO is drafted by the Village and Bond Council, and it provides that you commit tax incremental financing revenue from your TID district only. It's not a general obligation bond that the village has to, you're not borrowing any money. You are just committing to an expenditure, and the funds come from the increment that's received from the property owners paying their tax revenues within the TID district. So it doesn't come in the door, it doesn't get paid out. I don't know, Harry, if you want to add anything further on the explanation.
isn't it in simplified terms? It's basically a savings account. Money comes in, it's saved, and then it goes out. It's no additional obligation of the village.
Correct.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Approval of AV checks, Mr. Wishaw, if you would please.
Mr. President, I move to approve AP checks totaling $397,964.09, and I do have a comment after the second.
I'll second it. Go ahead.
Okay, there was 3 invoices in there that I questioned, and Todd responded today. I got an email back. I'll forward those to Jennifer, and she can send them to you just for your information. 2 of them are related to TID 6, and there's another one for another Eller's bill for continuing disclosure reporting that I was questioning also. I won't go into all bloody details, but the first one is reimbursable from TID 6. The second one is regarding what we're discussing in closed session tonight, so I won't talk about that anymore. So anyway, I'll send you that email to Jennifer's report to you.
Thank you, Mr. Wishaw. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Action approved. We will move into, we'll take a motion to go into a closed session. Going to S 19.851E, which is statute of liberty and negotiated purchase of public properties investing in public funds. And that is specified public business, whenever compared to the bargaining require a closed session specifically to discuss possible developments of section and pursuant to 19.851C, statute of employment, promotion, compensation, performance evaluation, data for the public employee, over which the governing body has jurisdiction and exercise responsibilities specifically to conduct the village administrator's review.
I'll make a motion with a request to short break.
I'll second the motion.
For a short break.
Roll call, please. To go into-
President Livingston.
Yes.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Trustee McKenna.
Yes.
Trustee Jones.
Yes.
Pierce. Yes. Trustee Lee.
Yes.
We are recessed for holidays, 5 minutes.